dado el llanto.
Good evening and welcome to the Justice Celebration. My name is Richard Witt and it is a joy to be with you this evening. Along with Melina, we are pleased to bring to you the Justice Celebration, and our theme tonight is welcoming. It's that time in our region when we start welcoming back the Apple workers, and in our broader society, we're welcoming back each other into restaurants and schools and what have you in the midst of the pandemic. And so our team tonight thought that it would be important to give some thought to what it means to welcome people. You know, you can't drive by a church anywhere without seeing the sign saying welcome. And somebody said to me recently, you know, there's a difference between welcoming somebody and really inviting them to join you. So this evening, we are really blessed to have some amazing people with us, and we're glad that you're with us. And we'll begin with a opening prayer by Leila Ramirez and a song, a duet between Willow Benison and Stephanie Quintanilla, and a poem by H from Hobart Williams Smith. But let's begin with a prayer to get us going.
Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's Justice Celebration. I will now be reading a short opening prayer. I welcome all good things in life so I can be guided on the right path. I welcome all thoughts, feelings, and emotions so I can move forward. I welcome opportunities and new friends so I can view life from a different perspective. And finally, I welcome you all to enjoy tonight's Justice Celebration. Amen.
I knew I wouldn't forget you, and so I wouldn't let you blow my mind. Your sweet moonbeams, the smell of you in every single dream I dream. I knew when we collided, you're the one I had decided was one of my kind. Hey soul sister, ain't that Mr. on the radio, stereo, the way you move ain't fair, no. Hey soul sister, I don't wanna miss a single thing you do tonight. Hey, hey, hey. Just in time. I'm so glad you had a warning track, mine like me. You gave my life direction, the game show of connection. You can't deny. I'm so obsessed. My heart is bound to be right out my untrimmed chest. I believe in you like a virgin, you're Madonna, and I'm always gonna wanna blow your mind. Hey soul sister, ain't that Mr. on the radio, stereo, the way you move ain't fair, no. Hey soul sister, I don't wanna miss a single thing you do.
Good evening. Buenas noches. My name is Heather May. I go by H, and I'm delighted to be part of tonight's RMM Justice Celebration. RMM is one of my favorite organizations. Before I begin, I just wanted to give a very brief visual description of myself for those for whom it might be helpful. I am a white genderqueer person with hair that is chin length and dyed purple, and it falls on one side to my chin, and on the other side it's shaved. I am wearing a red sleeveless blouse, and behind me is a chalkboard, and it has a quote from one of my favorite directors, Anne Bogart. She wrote, "A risk is a leap in the dark, a jump off a high diving board, and a necessary ingredient in every artistic endeavor." So I'm going to take a little risk with you tonight. Initially, I thought I would read someone else's poetry, but in honor of yesterday's Juneteenth, I thought maybe I would try to work through some of the kind of complicated feelings I've been having around our nation's history and this recognition, long overdue, of that important holiday. And sometimes I just find that when my thoughts are complicated, they're best resolved through poetic form. So I have two poems for you tonight. One at the end is just a 5-line cinquain, and the first is a longer poem. It's called On Juneteenth. Pieces of speeches stretch across my screen, each tab unfinished business we learn as gospel truth. Founding fathers perform magic tricks, distract with dazzling ideals, all men created equal, free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. We slumber in the American dream, missing the sleight of white hand hiding Black humanity in mathematical equation. 3/5. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Frederick Douglass asked, 47 miles and 169 years away. The inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. My fathers, forefathers bequeath me history as an endless march towards equality. White savior complex. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and 899 days later, General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston to liberate enslaved people by telling them about it. Harriet Tubman might have something to say about that. Moses was the true magician. Her math, restorative, computed in the mind to leave as little as possible behind. 14 journeys, at least 60 enslaved people struggling their way to freedom together. Her words as elusive as the unknown number of Black enslaved people who freed themselves against all odds, risking everything. What to me is Juneteenth? Second Independence Day, Black Independence Day, Jubilee Day. It's the day I catch my forefathers in their sleight of hand, a promise still unfulfilled, old math. Proclaim liberation while 2.3 million Black Americans remain shackled in jail. National holiday commemorating a history it's illegal to teach in 5 states. And yet, it is also the day we celebrate the full and yet unfulfilled acknowledgement of the humanity and freedom of all Americans. Take one step closer to the land that never has been yet. And remember the immeasurable strength of the true liberators of Black Americans themselves. And this is my cinquain, which, if you don't know the form, it's a 5-line poem with 2 syllables, 4 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, and 2 syllables. Juneteenth, community. Laughter unfurls from tears, whispers of ancestors calling, welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, H. I can't help but to remember that this is also the anniversary, 2-year anniversary of the passage of the Farm Worker Fair Labor Practices Act that gave farm workers in New York equal rights under the law. There's much to celebrate this weekend, much to remember. Want to invite now Layla to introduce our storyteller.
Hello. Can you
There you
guys
are.
hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know. Something's happening with my camera. I can't turn it on. Okay, there we go.
Hey, Layla, if you're speaking, it went back to mute again, so we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Lila Ramirez, and I have the pleasure tonight of introducing tonight's storyteller, Mr. Archie Allen, who is principal of Sodus Junior Senior High School, which I attend. Mr. Allen is a big inspiration to all the students and never fails to show how much he cares about our education. These are just two of the many reasons why I believe that his story should be heard.
So, thank you, Lila. So, first, thank you for that poem. That poem was very moving. And as you were talking, I was thinking about 100 other stories going through my head, going, "Wow, I should tell this other story." Um, so, I mean, just from what you were saying, it was just very powerful. So, thank you very much. So, what's interesting is I'm so like touched by Lila asking me to speak. So, I was just trying to think of every story that I've ever told in my life and thought about how much fun I've had telling them and which one was important to everyone here. I also realized that most of my stories are not 30 minutes long or 15 minutes, anything like that. They're like 5 minutes. So I put together a bunch of them and I just put them in the chat and said, hey, which one do people want to hear? So I put in 6 different stories in there. And if you guys can just throw in which one you want to hear at start of one, I'll tell it. One is called Beat the Number One. I was a wrestler in college. So I wrestled in high school and then I went to college and wrestled there. And I wrestled at a Division I school and I wound up being an All-American at it. But I didn't start till 9th grade. And I think I was a very tough little young youth in the city that got bused to a suburban school in the end in 9th grade. And I just joined a team so I could make friends. And so I wound up wrestling at a school that was really good. And I beat the number 1 guy in the country one time. So there's a story behind that I could share with you all. There's also, I started a company called Rocky 6, which teaches inner city lacrosse it teaches lacrosse to inner city youth. And so we have a great program, but it all started through the loss of my own brother. My brother was murdered in 1999. So I can tell that story also. The fact that I went to Columbia University is another story in itself about how that happened. So I can tell you that story. There's a great story about me running in California with the wrestling team and my coach making us run for hours. I can tell you that story. I can tell you about a time where I was winning a match with about 15 seconds left and wound up losing it. And it's basically a story about how your anger will get the best of you in the end if you let it. And then I have another story about how my running with the police when I was 15 years old. I grew up in the city, but I was bused to a suburban school called Irondequoit. And Irondequoit was really well known for its like super duper law enforcement, I would say. They were super law enforcement. And I can tell you the story about what happened there, which is a very interesting story. So whichever story you want to hear, I'll say. Anybody wants to throw it in the chat, say, tell us this story, I'll just start telling it.
I put in the E6 and the winning and losing.
Okay, all right. So I'll tell the E6 story first, and then I'll do the story about, you said winning and losing. So that's the one about my senior year losing that match, and how that your anger get the best of you. All right. Well, you know what? Let me do the anger get the best of you story first, because that one's a quicker one than the other one. My senior year, I had 31 wins and 5 losses, and I just heard that the other day. One of my students researched me from high school. They were doing a senior year effective speech story. They said, Mr. Allen, you were 31 and 5 your senior year, and it's been 20 years since my senior year. So I'm like, wow, I was right, but I was also cringing because I remember one of those losses I was not supposed to lose, and so I was like, I should have been 31 and 5. I should be 32 and 4. So what happened was I was in California and I'm wrestling in a tournament in the semifinals of the match. And I'm wrestling against a guy from Iowa. If you guys know anything about Iowa, Iowa is like the top of the top of the top of wrestling. And they've won nationals like 10 times in a row, something like that. They're really good. Well, I was in the semis against some guy from Iowa, and I was beating him by 4 points with about 15 seconds left. Throughout the match, the referee kept saying to me, son, you're stalling, son, you're stalling. And he would say it, and one time he warned me for it and said, you've been warned, you've been stalling. And then we kept wrestling, and I'm still winning, and he hits me with another stalling, and that gives the guy a point. So at some point in the match, I was winning by 5, and then he said I was stalling to the point he gave the kid a point for it, and so now I'm winning only by 4. We go out of bounds, there's 15 seconds left in the match, and he says, you're stalling, you better stop it or I'm gonna hit you again. And I looked at him, and I said, oh, I'm stalling? I'm stalling? Well, watch this. And I said this right to the referee. You're in any sport, you're not supposed to talk to the referee. So I looked at him and said, I'm stalling? Then watch this. I went back to the center of the mat. He blew the whistle, 15 seconds left. I hit the guy in his head, and then I just dove at him in a double leg shot. I got both of his legs, and I picked the kid up, and I slammed him as hard as I could to show the referee that there was no stalling. I could beat this kid as bad as I want, whenever I want. And so I slammed him, but my momentum was so fast that I went straight through him, and the kid, he was a good wrestler, kicked his legs up in the air. I went flying over the top of him, landed on my back, and the kid jumped over me and put me on my back and held me there for 5 seconds, and the whistle blew. That is called a 5-point move, something that never happens in wrestling. The kid hit me with a 5-point move. I was winning by 4. He wound up winning the match by 1 point. 15 seconds left. There was no need for me to do anything at all, except for maybe stall. And instead of me winning the match, I let my anger get the best of me. That story has come back on me at least 10 times since then. Just the other day, I had to tell my son that story because he was so adamant that he had to have a car because he wanted to make sure, he wanted to prove to his mother that he could do something on his own. But his disagreement and anger for trying to show his mother what he could do, he was going to settle for a car for $360 a month that was only cost $10,000. He was going to pay $12,000 in interest on that car. He was willing to take such a big loss just to prove something. His anger was going to get the best of him, and he was going to take a bigger loss than the anger. And I tell that to people all the time. Don't let your anger get in the way of something beautiful. I could have had a win had I not wanted to prove something or show somebody that had nothing to do with the match in the first place. So that's just a quick story about allowing something so small and letting it be small ruin something so beautiful. Okay. Another story you asked me about the wins and losses, not the wins and losses, about E6. Well, I was a teacher. When I graduated from college, I went back to Western Irondequoit, the school that I graduated from, and became a teacher there. And for years, my goal after college was that I was going to end racism in the whole world. That was my goal. I'm going to end racism in the world. It was about 7 years into teaching there that someone said to me, hey, Mr. Allen, when is Black History Month? And I remember looking at the wrestler and I said to him, fool, it's in February. We're in Black History Month right now. But then it hit me. It wasn't that kid's fault that he didn't know. I was the only Black teacher at the whole school. It was on me to make sure people knew about Black History Month. So I'm thinking, as I went home, at first I was so mad at Western Irondequoit for never promoting it. For 7 years I had been there, I never saw a single poster in a wall in a hallway. I never see anything that said, well, we welcome Black History Month, nothing. And I was like, that's so terrible of Western Irondequoit to do this. Then it hit me, that's so terrible of you. You haven't done anything. What were you expecting out of these people? You should have been doing something yourself. That's a good story in itself, by the way. Just put it onus on you instead of putting it on everybody else. Put some onus on yourself. But So what happened was I said, you know what, I'm going to have a forum. I started a group called Minority Vitality, and I had a forum where I put like 7 kids on a panel on a stage, and I said, this is the panelists. Everybody, please come. We're going to have a discussion about how to end racism in the world. This discussion was supposed to have been 45 minutes. It was an hour and a half later. We were still just going around in circles about what we could do. Somebody would make a suggestion, someone else would say why it wouldn't work. Finally, a young lady said, I got an idea. She was on the panel. She said, we've been doing this for over an hour and a half. Instead of trying to end racism in the world, why don't we just end racism in your own family? She said, why don't everybody just go home and tell your mother not to be racist anymore? Tell your father not to be racist anymore. Talk to your family members. We can't end racism in the world. We can end it in our houses. And it was the first time that I had to stop thinking about such a large, grand scheme and narrowed it into a small thing. I could do that. I could call my mother today and say, Ma, what is your problem with X, Y, or Z? And I can talk to my kids on my block and say, hey, what's up with you guys thinking that white kids are this or black kids are that? Or I could do that. It became very real to me. And it hit me, when you have unrealistic goals, it doesn't even make you get up in the morning. An unrealistic goal is something you set out to the side, you put on a shelf, and you never actually even try to achieve it. Once it became real and it was something very small and minute, I decided to get going. That same year, that summer, I started something called Rock Wrestling. Rock Wrestling is a program where we went down. I took my whole wrestling team. I had a great wrestling team at West Irondequoit. We didn't rent it, man. We took one of the school's vans. We drove downtown to the inner city of Rochester, and we just found kids that are walking around by themselves, no parents, anything. And these are like 9 and 10-year-olds just walking around downtown. We made pamphlets and we handed it to them. We said, come to our wrestling camp next week or something like that at this church that we had rented out, but the church allowed us to have it. And so we brought wrestling mats down to this church. And on the first day of camp, all these kids showed up. With no parents, no permission slips, nothing. We were just going to work with kids because we didn't know what we were doing. We just knew we were going to help some kids. After, from 8 to 11, we worked with kids. At 11 o'clock, those kids were supposed to go home, and a new set of kids were supposed to come at 12. 11 o'clock hit. The kids were all like, oh, thank you so much on day one. We said, all right, take it easy, we'll see you tomorrow. And they were like, well, we're not going anywhere. Don't you have another session at 12? And we're like, yeah, but that's for a new group of kids. They're like, we're not going nowhere. We have another place to go. We're going to stay here. So we said, okay, cool. They stayed at 12, but I was like, I got to feed them between 11 and 12. The reason why it was 2 different camps until 11 and it started another one at 12 is because we didn't have any lunch. So I ran down, I remember seeing this little hot dog stand. It was 50-cent hot dogs. I was like, okay, there's 24 kids here. That's $12. I went and bought 24 hot dogs and I came running back like, here, everybody eat. And everybody ate and we wrestled some more for 3 more hours. The next day came and sure enough, we're not going anywhere, Mr. Coach Allen. So I had to go get hot dogs again. So for the rest of the week, I bought, 24 hot dogs every single day, except for a few more because a couple kids were really hungry. So we bought more hot dogs and we fed them that way. At the end of the week on Friday, I said, all right, guys, that's the end of these sessions. I'll see you guys next year. Hopefully you come back again. And they were like, wait a minute, don't you have another camp next week? We were like, yeah, but it's a different thing. It's for a different part of wrestling. So it's for a new group of students. And they were like, no, we're not going anywhere either. We have nothing else to do. So we're like, oh, so you're coming back next week? Yep. And sure enough, all those kids came back. So by second week, it reminded me, when I was growing up in the city, my whole life I went to a camp. It was 6 weeks long. It was every single day. It was like MCC camp. You walked to a bus stop and it took you there and you were there all day long. It wasn't 3 hours, it was 6. And you got a bus there and back and it was for 6 weeks straight. Because I went to West Irondequoit and started in 9th grade, that had changed in my mind. And schools like West Irondequoit, they send their kids to a camp for a week at a time, just 1 week. You go one time and you come home and then that's it. So I had to remember the difference between a city student and a suburban student. And I was working with city kids, I should have known better. So from that day forward, I knew next year I need to just set up a camp for city kids, which will take 6 weeks long and it'll be all day. So that summer, I called up after we had ended the 6 weeks of camp, I called up my brother, my big brother's name is Art, and I said, hey, I know you play lacrosse, and I don't. I need you to get lacrosse in our camp. I'm going to do wrestling still, but you're going to do lacrosse. You're going to outfit the kids. And he said, absolutely. We got incorporated. We started a company called Rocky 6. We couldn't call it Rock Wrestling anymore. So we called it Rocky 6. The E6 stands for something, for 6 different E's. And we've been doing it ever since. And even though when I became an administrator, I couldn't run it anymore like I was when I was a teacher, but I oversee it now. We have We work over 1,500 kids for 15 years now. And we have lacrosse teams that play against Webster, Pittsburgh, Brighton. We just went 5-1 this year because we had a shortened season because of COVID. But we beat Pittsburgh, we beat Webster, we beat Irondequoit. We only lost to Brighton, which is very odd because Brighton doesn't seem to usually win a lot. But we lost to them of all people. But we have 2 kids in boarding school in New Hampshire and in Delaware. We have the #1 kid in the country for 10th grade that lives at a boarding school right now, and it just took off. 15 years later, we have like one of the best teams in the city of Rochester, and we have gotten kids into lacrosse and into college because of it. So it all started because of a camp that I started. But the interesting part that I left out was this. My brother was murdered in 1999. I have 2 brothers. One brother was shot twice in the head in 1996. He was shot twice. Someone beat him. They beat him up. They jumped him, beat him up, knocked him unconscious, stood over him, and shot him in the head twice while he was unconscious, and he lived. In 99, my other brother was murdered watching someone's child, and the father of the child got upset that while he was watching his son, he started calling him dad. He started calling my brother dad. And so the actual father didn't like that and literally pulled out a gun and shot him for it. And the little boy is the one who turned him in and said, my dad shot Abu. My dad shot Abu. Abu means father in Arabic because my brother was Muslim. And so the little boy was witness to it and saw the whole thing happen and was the one that told the police. So I said, what is going on with the deprivation of life in the city of Rochester? Something's got to change. And then my brother that wasn't killed from the 2 shots in the head was shot again 7 more times all across his whole body, but he lived again. So I said, who's going to hire this man now that he's got 9 shots on him? And then I thought to myself, well, you are. And so when I started the camp, I said, I'm going to start this camp and I'm going to have him oversee the operations of it. So I hired my own brother and I made him head of the operations. At the funeral for my one brother, though, the pastor said, I remember I was sitting in a pew and I had my head down. I was looking at the program and I wasn't really thinking about much of anything. And the pastor said, everybody can stop crying. Our key is here and he's going to do something about this. He is going to leave something that's going to make you remember his brother. Don't worry about it. And I remember looking up going, well, what am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? I have nothing. I had no plans. I was upset. I was hurt. And I didn't have any plans of anything besides continuing to teach and be a math teacher and keep my wrestling team going. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I had to have something to do now. I had no plan. That was in '99. Well, the program started. It's 6 years later after the girl spoke at the. I knew I was supposed to have something to do, but I couldn't think of what it was. Then I had the young lady speak and told me to end racism in just my own family. Then my other brother was shot again, and it hit me. This is what I have to do, and that's how Rock Wrestling started, which started Rocky 6, which now has contributed to all of these students living better lives and going on and becoming something and prospering. And many of them have had lacrosse scholarships, all starting from my brother being murdered and my pastor telling me our key is going to do something about this. And now I have hundreds of kids that are going to college off of the scholarships that we started them on. So that is it. I like that one. I like that. I like knowing that I did something about my brother and he's living inside of that dream. Okay. Oh, I see somebody says about the running in California. The running in California, I'll tell it in a quick way, okay? So that way, because there's a long story and a short story. The short version of the running in California is while we were a different California, a different year, everything. My senior year, this is my sophomore year. We went to California for my sophomore year, and I was really good at wrestling. I don't know what happened, but I just didn't believe in losing. It wasn't about me being good. I just didn't think I could lose. So there's a big difference between the two. So I wasn't really good at wrestling. I was just really good at having emotions and like not letting anybody beat me. So I wound up winning the tournament in California my sophomore year. And when the tournament was over, that out there in California, it's very different. So when you win, you don't get a trophy. You got a Stetson hat. So I got this thing called a Stetson, which to this day, I didn't know they were that important. They cost a lot of money. So I'm in the pool at the hotel with the Stetson hat on. It's completely wet and soggy because we're having a great old time enjoying the fact that I won the tournament. And the coach calls us out of the pool and says, everybody go up in your rooms, get dressed, we're going for a run. And I'm like, okay, it was in San Francisco. So I'm thinking, man, I just got done winning this tournament. It was today. I'm tired, I'm sore. We're enjoying ourselves, coach. We have another 5 days out here. Why can't we run every day but today? But whatever, I'm the captain of the team. We all get dressed and we get into 2 vans and we drive up to, if anybody's been to San Francisco, you know it's all hills. So we drive to the bottom of a hill. He tells everybody get out of the van. My coach is from San Francisco, by the way, so he knew exactly where to take us. He took us to the bottom of this hill and he said, run up to the top of it and run back down. We looked at it like, oh, wow, this has got to be at least a half a mile straight up. So we took off running and we ran back down and we stopped like, all right, coach, what's up? He was like, no, turn back around, run again. So then we took off up the hill again and ran back down. Then he says, run again. Hold on, my son just came home from nowhere. Hey, young man. Hey, boy. Hey. So, well, look, I'm in the car right now, but we're going to talk. Go ahead, enjoy some food. We cooked some steak out there for you. All right, so that's my son. He's awesome. So, and I don't know why he's awesome. He gets on my nerves, but he's awesome still. So we run up and down this hill at least 4 more times. And finally, after the 4th time, the co-captain's name was Brad. Brad had a way tougher mentality than me. He came from a school called St. Ed's, which is the #1 school in the country for wrestling. He had won the whole national tournament before when he was in high school. He had a mentality that was amazing. When we got down to the bottom of the run, the 4th time or 5th time, I don't know which one it was, he looked at the coach and said, yeah, coach, give us another one. And I went, like, what? Like, wait. What are you saying? And coach said, yeah, run it again. So we took off running up to the top of the hill. And I didn't say much. I was so mad. I was steaming. But I just kept my cool and I ran up to the top, ran back down. So this is literally like a mile every time you do this, okay? We get back down to the bottom again. And he looks at the coach and goes, yeah, coach, give us another one. And coach said, turn back around and keep running. So when we started running up the hill, I'm upset, I'm frustrated. And I looked at him and I go, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to punch you in your face if you say that again. And I told him that. I said, I'm going to punch you if you say that one more time to coach. Why are you doing that? And he said, because our key, he's not going to break me. Coach ain't breaking me today. And I thought to myself, wow, coach isn't going to break me today. He got us out here running because he wants to break us. We just had a tournament. We're all sore. He wants to break us. Okay, I like that. So when we ran back down that hill, when we got time to coach, we both said, yeah, coach, give us another one. And he said, do another lap. And we ran back up that lap. But what I noticed was suddenly my legs didn't hurt anymore. It was all about not letting coach break us. All of a sudden, my body wasn't sore as much as it was before. I ran myself right out of being hurt because it was my mentality that was making me sore, not what was actually going on. When you change your perspective on something, when you change the way you see it, it will get better. There's kids out there that say, I hate school. If you just change your perspective around, you would like it. I have no friends. If you change your perspective around, you would have some. It's not necessarily always what people are doing to you. It's how you take what's being done and how you feel about it. 2 kids can go to the exact same school, be in the exact same class. One person love that teacher. The other person think the teacher's a jerk. It's not what the teacher's doing. It's how you take it. It's so your perspective on it. So the fact that he had made us run those laps and we were thinking, oh my God, this hurts so much. I hate this. Just changing your perspective made it go, yeah, coach, give me another one. And we did that thing until the sun went down and we ran that thing for a very long, until we frustrated coach. And coach said, everybody stop, get in the van. It was just like, he didn't say another word. He probably had a monumental speech to give us that day after he ran us for a while. He's gonna give us a huge speech. He was speechless by the time it was over. And we just went back to our hotels and we rested. But I'll never forget, coach didn't break us that day. And I know that the biggest thing that could have happened that day was to realize that if you change your perspective, you can live a grander life. So that's my story there.
Thank you very much. I know we could listen to you all day. We've got a couple of other things we want to include,
Yeah.
but I'm going to plant a seed because we're going to come back in a few moments to talk a bit about the challenges or the ingredients of welcoming. So I'm going to plant a seed about what do you feel are some of the ingredients about welcoming students into your school. But right now we're going to turn to Andres Chamorro to sing a song for us to give us a chance to reflect on the stories which you've heard. And it's really clear to me that we need to connect with you to hear more stories at some point, because I could listen all night. Somebody once said, you know, if somebody's a great storyteller, you could listen forever. If not, after 2 minutes, you're tuned out. And I know I'd be tuned all night long. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back, but for a moment, Andres.
This song is called Gracias a la Vida. I hope you like it. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio dos luceros que cuando los abro, perfecto distingo lo negro del blanco, y en el alto cielo su fondo estrellado, y en las multitudes la mujer que yo amo. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el oído que en todo su ancho graba noche y día, grillos y canarios, martillos, turbinas, ladridos y chubascos, y la voz tan tierna de mi bien amado. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el sonido y el abecedario, con él las palabras que pienso y declaro, madre, amigo, hermano, y la luz alumbrando la ruta del alma de la que estoy amando. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la marcha de mis pies cansados, con ellos anduve ciudades y charcos, playas y desiertos, montañas y llanos, y la casa tuya, tu calle, tu patio. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio el corazón que agita su marco, cuando miro el fruto del cerebro humano, cuando miro el bueno tan lejos del malo, cuando miro el fondo de tus ojos claros. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la risa y me ha dado el llanto, así yo distingo dicha de quebranto, los dos materiales que forma mi canto, y el canto de ustedes que es el mismo canto, y el canto de todos que es mi propio canto. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. Now, as we've said before, we gather here in order to go out there, to be out in the world. So we have some action steps from our colleague Sean, and then a song from another colleague, Wilmer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thumbs up if you can hear me all right. Okay. So my name's Sean Talent. I'm the regional coordinator for Western New York with Rural and Migrant Ministry. Today, we're going to do a little bit of connection between Rural and Migrant Ministry and our traditional historic work with farm workers and Juneteenth. African Americans arrived to Wayne County through the Underground Railroad as a result of the Civil War, as Jim Crow laws were passed in the South and people moved north looking for opportunities. Around 1920, more than 15% of farmers in the United States were African American. Discriminatory practices by the Department of Agriculture and the funding options available drove that number down to historical lows. And as African Americans were unable to continue owning their farms, they became farm workers. And the county began to depend, rather than on African American farm owners, on African American farm labor that traveled from Florida up through Georgia, Carolinas, and ultimately to New York, and then headed back down to follow the crops. I'm going to start with a story about a woman named Montrose Cole. We have this, one of our resources in our library is Migrant Farm Workers of Wayne County, New York, a collection of oral histories from the backroads. So Montrose Cole was an African-American girl from Haines City, Florida. When she recorded this in 1985, she was 16 years old. She started working when she was 7 or 8 years old, coming up with her family to pick apples and then head back down. When she recorded her story, she mentioned she was pregnant, spending multiple hours a day picking apples, and attended school part-time in New York, part-time in Florida. She lived right over here in Clyde on the Freeman farm, I believe. But you have to look at, like, one of the things we want to recognize, she was also a member of the 4-H club. And one of the projects of this 4-H club as a young person was going around collecting stories of things that were affecting people in the neighborhood, how their families lived, and looking for ways to recognize what's good, what's bad, what can we fix? How do we tell our story to make an impact? And when we look at our justice celebrations and the role of stories like those from Archie, it's these stories that draw people in, that bring us here, bring us together, and make us talk about what we can do, what's worth doing together. And I highlight this need to tell these stories because Wayne County has its bicentennial celebration coming up. There are groups of people right now working to collect stories. And I think one of the things that young people can do is to get a tape recorder and start telling the stories of the farm workers that were African American, became Haitian and Jamaican, and are often now of Latin American descent, or the work is being done by Latin American immigrants. So if anybody here is interested in telling stories so that we can make sure these are preserved, and the history of Wayne County agriculture isn't just white farmers, it's also the color, farm workers of color, farm worker immigrants, and the people that actually make up our communities. That's really important to connecting to our shared history and making people feel welcome by acknowledging that you're not different, that you're part of a multicultural community, and you have a rightful place in it. So if anybody would like to get involved in the storytelling process, please send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat right now. And that's one small step we can take to start working towards justice for this month. Have a beautiful night.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Justice Celebration. Tonight I will be singing a song to you by Enrique Iglesias. The title of the song is Pueden pasar 3,000 años, pero nunca te olvidaré. 3,000 years can go by and I still won't forget you. So I hope you enjoy it. otros labios, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré. Pueden borrar mi memoria, pueden robarme tu historia, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré. Puedo morirme mañana, puede secarse mi alma, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré. ¿Cómo olvidar tu sonrisa? No, no. ¿Cómo olvidar tu mirada? ¿Cómo olvidar que rezaba para que no te marcharas? ¿Cómo olvidar tus locuras? ¿Cómo olvidar que volabas? ¿Cómo olvidar que aún te quiero más que a mi vida, más que a nada? Pueden pasar 3000 años, puedes besar otros labios, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré, pero nunca te olvidaré. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilmer. Thank you. Seeing Wilmer reminds me that we have our summer day program coming up in July, and we will be having an open house at the end of that gathering, at the end of those 2 weeks. So we'll be sending invitations to everybody for that, and we're looking for volunteers to help with that. So if you're interested in volunteering or know someone who might be, that'd be great. We have just a few minutes, so I want to take a moment and just invite folks to think of a key word that you would think would be an ingredient to welcoming people. And to start off, I'll invite Mr. Allen again to give us a few thoughts on what he thinks are essential ingredients to welcoming students into his school. And then we'll open it up and have a final prayer from Nita Bird.
So you're asking me what I think is essential to be welcoming?
Yeah, what are some key ingredients that you would hold up to welcoming because I know you have a diverse array of students that come to your school.
Oh yes. So it's listening. I think that it's very important that we make sure that students are heard. We have like a welcoming committee. So on the surface, like the Band-Aid situation would be, we have a student that takes a kid around, shows them and we introduce them to people. But the larger thing is that our culture is very inviting. You look around our school, you walk in, the walls say it all day. They talk about inviting people. The walls literally have posters up that celebrate diversity, talk about different cultures, and our teachers are the same way. Every week we receive a newsletter that has some type of celebration of diversity for the entire background of the newsletter. Every single week this happens. And for the entire year, we have all of our students have a puzzle piece at the beginning when they first walk in the door. It lets everyone know that everybody's a piece of this puzzle of our school. So it's written on our walls. It's spoken in our language when we talk. And even a student that goes to our school knows that if, let's say, they've been missing for a week and a half or haven't already come back 2 weeks later, teachers have a choice of saying, "Oh, look, I'm glad you're finally back," and things like that. But instead, we've all been taught to be very welcoming and say, "I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Tell me about what's going on," when they're alone. But then we try not to embarrass the kids. We don't say that, you should have been here a long time ago. We're just, it's in our nature to be very welcoming. We actually do this on a PD level, meaning professional development level. We talk about it in our professional developments.
Thank you for that intentionality. I'm always appreciative of folks that have an intentionality. I'll invite the rest of those gathered tonight to put into the chat a word that you think is a key ingredient to welcoming folks. And as we do that, we'll invite Nita Bird to offer us a blessing as we go forward. Our Zoom ends at 6:30, so I know we could go on and on, but we need to honor that time. So words into the chat that are ingredients for welcoming, and hopefully Dr. Allen's words and these words will inspire us as we go forward, welcoming people into our lives, into our institutions, and into our communities, overcoming the walls and the barriers that keep people from feeling welcome. And Nita will be sent off by you.
Hey, well, this has been just a phenomenal Justice Celebration. Can you hear me, Richard? Okay. So let's just take a moment to give thanks this evening. We give thanks that we have had the opportunity to come together and be welcomed in this space, to welcome others among us. And we especially give thanks for our speaker, R.K. Allen. And may we welcome his words into our hearts so that we can remember that by grace, healing can be found in unprecedented circumstances. Make us agents of healing as we go forth and open our hearts to see the love that sustains us, and allow us to welcome in the warmth of friendships that have been nurtured on this Zoom call this evening. And may God's blessing go with you and empower each and every one of us to take risk, to go forth bravely in love. Amen.
Amen. And thank you all very much. And R.K. Allen, what a blessing to get to meet you. Thank you for taking the time. And Layla, thank you for introducing us to him. And take care, everybody. We will see you a month from now. Take care.